started. We've got a lot to get through and don't want to waste any time. So welcome everybody. We're delighted to have such a strong response to this event today. We know that Versus Arthritis has got a really amazing story to tell about the benefits of taking an integrated approach to their supporter communications, how they built the evidence base for planning and coordinating communications around supporters' activities rather than their organisational silos, and work to change their working practices to enable that. And at More Onion, we're really delighted to have had the privilege to have worked with them on that journey. A lot of the integration that Jack and Beth are going to be talking today will be focusing on combining campaigning and fundraising. But we believe the lessons are really relevant whether or not your organisation campaigns. Coordinating your communication takes time and commitment. There can be a natural tendency to fall into silos. So if you don't campaign, you can maybe consider whether areas of your work that work in parallel that could be more coordinated and benefit from the same approaches. So before we start, a quick introduction to us at More Onion. I'm Jess, I'm your host today. More Onion is a digital mobilisation agency. We work with progressive non-profits to support their campaigning and fundraising goals. We're your hosts today, and my colleague Charlotte will be keeping an eye on the chat and dealing with any technical questions or problems you have. So just message her directly or pop a message in the chat if you've got any questions about the webinar or about More Onion. So at More Onion, we've worked with over 100 clients across the UK and mainland Europe. We're bringing together a team of expert mobilisers and technologists in 3 key fields: campaigning and fundraising strategy, creative design, including testing and optimization, and technology, including our campaigning and fundraising platform Impact Stack. We also aim to contribute to the wider sector by sharing and promoting learning and exchange through free reports on our website, free webinars like this one, and our mobilisers event, Impact Space. Formerly known as ECF Europe, we're relaunching this event with a new name post-pandemic, and the first new event will take place in 2024, with 2 online events and an in-person event in Amsterdam in April. Jack and Beth from Versus Arthritis have been working with More Onion for something like 4 years now on quite a journey towards a real change, both to how they communicate with their supporters and how they organise themselves internally in order to enable them to do that. I think they've got a really exciting story to tell with lots of lessons for all of us. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from them today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jack and to Bethan.
Hi, yes, thank you. So we're going to talk to you today about the work we've done over the past few years on supporter-centered digital communication. So first, just to start with a bit of an introduction to who we are. So Versus Arthritis is the UK's largest arthritis charity that was formed back in 2018 after the merger of Arthritis Research UK and Arthritis Care. And for those who aren't aware, arthritis is a condition that affects about 10 million people in the UK, and it has a huge effect on people's lives, their ability to work, care for a family, move, go about a normal daily life. And our mission as a charity is to ensure everyone with arthritis gets the treatments and support they need, and we do that by investing in research into new treatments and better care and diagnosis. We also have a range of services to support people with arthritis, and we also campaign on issues that are important to people with arthritis. So my name's Jack. I am the Innovation Manager at Versus Arthritis. And I've been with the charity for about 7 years now, but for a lot of the period that we're about to talk about, I was actually in a different role as mass acquisition manager, so it was very much looking at how we could bring people into the organisation. And I'll just pass it to Beth just to introduce herself.
Yeah, my name is Bethan. I've been in the sector for 13 years, but at Versus Arthritis for the last 3. And while I'm now the supporter journey manager, that is my 3rd role in the organisation, just to give you a feel of how changeable things have been during the time we're going to talk about.
Great, thank you. Firstly, just to give you a bit of a snapshot of where we are today in 2023. So we are 4 years into a project to transform our approach to supporter journeys. And we've been working, as Jess said, we've been working with More Onion very closely to do that, and with their support for a number of years now. It's a key organisational priority for us, or rather it's become a key organisational priority for us. It's been identified as part of our new 5-year strategy as being key to what we're doing. It is something that the chief exec talks about in front of our all staff meetings. It has become a really important part of what we're doing, but it hasn't always been that way. And we've also just launched a new regular given product that has recruited over 400 new regular givers in its first 8 weeks from a very soft launch. And the insight and experience and everything we've learned from our approach to journeys is what has enabled us to launch that product and give us a huge platform for growth and loads of optimism for the future of that product. And today we'll just give you firstly a bit of an overview of the key milestones in the project, how it's developed, the strategy we've developed over the past 4 years, and the kind of milestones on the way. We'll also share some insights. Obviously, there's 4 years worth of work, so we can't share a huge amount, but we'll pick out some key bits that hopefully are interesting or useful to you. And we'll also share how we've been able to use this project to drive cultural change at an organisational level and really change the way we work as a charity. So yeah, where we started. So 4 years ago, we were a recently merged charity. We had a brand new brand. We merged towards the end of 2018, and then in early 2019, we were this new charity, new teams, new brand. We also had a new mass market fundraising team where Beth and I sat at the time, and a brand new fundraising strategy. But we were a heavily siloed organisation, which is not unusual in the sector. Teams operating in their own silos with their own data lists and their own individual siloed approach to communications. As a charity, we were heavily reliant on our legacy income, and there was an urgent need really for us to start to recruit new donors and do so in a scalable, cost-effective way. And that was all part of that kind of new mass market fundraising team. We were also a charity that was doing lots of big brand marketing campaigns to get our new brand out there, to really kind of build a new audience, huge spend across out of home, TV, radio, you name it, we did it. But there was no real strategy around retention or engagement of all these people who were newly engaging with the charity. There was really low rates of second action. There was high rates of lapsed contacts. People who were coming in were just becoming lapsed immediately. And we had really poor donor conversion. All these people who were coming to us, we just had no propositions, and we weren't convincing them that actually we were a charity worthy of their support. And also, we didn't know anything about our audience. We were kind of operating in the dark a bit. We had lots of assumptions, but we had very little insight into who our supporters were. So yeah, we kind of realized back in early 2019, we needed a journey. We needed a way to build a relationship with our supporters so that we could learn about them, but also they could learn about us. It would enable them to kind of broaden and deepen support of the charity. And yeah, we just needed to build relationships. So to do that, we felt we needed to support a journey that would provide a rewarding experience for people, that would, really kind of build a strong feeling and affinity for the charity and make them feel really valued as supporters. We wanted to build understanding from both sides. We wanted to learn about who our supporters were, what their needs and wants were, and what they expected of us. But also we wanted supporters to get an understanding of what we do as a charity and how we can help people with arthritis. And I think it's fair to say that many people just couldn't articulate, why what Versus Arthritis did, or why that was helpful at all. And we also just wanted to keep supporters engaged. Say we had so many people coming to us, engaging with us. We wanted to build that relationship. We wanted to maintain that relationship. So that's where we started. And how that kind of manifests itself initially is we approached More Onion to deliver a supporter journey workshop. So we did lots of research. We looked at the way different charities were doing things. We looked at different agencies, and More Onion stood out to us as someone who was doing something really clever and innovative with their approach to journeys. So we approached them and with a brief to create a workshop and a training session for all supporter-facing teams. And it was really important that we brought lots of different teams together. It wasn't the fundraising team doing training, it wasn't the services team doing training, it wasn't the campaign team, it was everyone. So we could really kind of build that shared understanding and all kind of practice working through those processes as together. It was different teams and learn about different each other's areas of work. And I think having that as a starting point was really, really valuable for us, and it allowed us to kind of create that shared understanding, get that buy-in, and draw upon that experience from outside of our charity. And that was really kind of tip number one, really, for us, was using that external resource. So training our case studies can be a really good kind of kick-off point of giving you a direction of travel, and it's a really good way to kind of get buy-in from all the relevant stakeholders. And these are just some photos actually Jess shared the other day from that first training. I was shocked that they still even existed, and that one in the top right there is actually the brief. I realized the one that I completed 4 years ago as part of that training. So it was really interesting to see that. That was really the start of that project for me. So yeah, that was a really great way for us to start this project. So and I will now pass over to Beth, who will talk about some of the next stages we went from there.
So at the time, we were in different roles. I was the new retention manager and Jack was the new acquisition manager. We could see that there was a chance here to do something really great, even though it technically didn't sit within our roles in our day-to-day, and it sort of sat in between us, as most projects seem to happen in the charity sector. It's always a bit of everybody pitching in. We tested loads of direct to donate acquisition with little success. So we knew that we really needed some help with this. And to do that, we started with a really small and discrete project with clear boundaries. We used this opportunity to pitch just for that resource, that small first welcome journey. In reflection, when we've talked about this, one project to overhaul the entire organisational approach to journeys would have been too big to manage, and we just wouldn't have achieved the same results that we have. We learned a lot by starting really small and developing it over really quite a lot of years. Next slide, please. So this was our initial aim, and we wanted to see what happened when you didn't define community in pots of campaigner, donor, even service user, to no longer silo people based on a particular action that they'd taken to bring them into the organisation. And this was the beginning of a whole load of learning on our part. So what we wanted to learn was stuff about our supporters. You know, Jack has already said we didn't really know them. You'll be really shocked to hear that our historical data wasn't in the best shape. I'm not sure if we're the first charity to ever say that, but we really didn't know our supporters. We didn't know who they were, what drove them to come into the organisation and get in touch, which meant that we really didn't know how we could meet their needs as an organisation. So our hypothesis was that we needed a journey, and we knew that we needed this to work. We knew that we would be wanting to build on whatever we learned from here. So our third tip is to pick a small number of metrics that are linked to your strategic objectives for your journey. Trying something and learning is fine. You know, we've made loads of mistakes. A lot of things that we've tried just fallen flat on their face. Some things that we thought we knew from other bits of the organisation in terms of a research appeal, for example, would work really well for this audience. Absolutely bombed. But then a really lovely giving people hope for the future message written by a researcher to say, this is what our plans are for this year, and this is why I think it's important, with a really, really soft PS at the end that said, if you wanted to chip in, please do, did really well. And that's not something that we would have known if we weren't testing in this way. So what we mean by a journey, this is a very pretty picture of it. And I think this Venn diagram could just as easily have organisational vision for the future on the left and supporters' vision for the future on the right. A supporter journey is still what would bring those two things together, creating a galvanised community of people that can be mobilised to create change together. And this is what that looks like. I don't expect you to be able to read this. It's very pretty though. And this is just to give you a feel for the mix of content that went into this welcome journey. So blue is loyalty, yellow is engagement, pink is campaigning, and then fundraising is red. And you can see there's not a huge amount of those, even though one of the things we were really trying to do was convert people to donor. This is all about building a relationship with supporters through providing a rewarding supporter experience, building understanding, both us understanding them and them understanding us, and then keeping them actively engaged, because past behaviour equals future behaviour.
Yeah, so that was obviously an overview of that kind of initial welcome journey. And here's just some of the kind of top line results we got as a result of that. First was that about 2.7% of new contacts into the charity had made a donation within the first 6 months. Now that might not sound like a huge amount, and for many charities it isn't at all. But for us, where we were starting and the benchmarks we had, that was an incredible result, and we were really, really pleased with that. I think more importantly, the cost of recruiting a new donor from this approach, from bringing in people through kind of low barrier actions and then cultivating them through an integrated journey, the overall cost of a new donor was less than £20 per new first time donor. But comparing that to other activity we tested and direct donate activity, our CPAs were 5, 6, 7 times that amount. So we were really, really pleased with that as a result. And as a starting point for this project, it was a great place for us to start. We also know that about 7.5% of those new donors had made a second gift within the first 6 months as well. So not only had we successfully recruited new donors in a cost-effective way, there was a small bunch of really engaged donors within that who had given twice within 6 months. So that was a great result for us. We also saw that 36% of those new leads had made at least one trackable action in the first 6 months beyond their initial recruitment action. So we, again, really pleased with that. From where we were starting back then and the benchmarks we had, where people had came in, taken action, and then done absolutely nothing more with us, to get to the point where more than a third of them had taken a second trackable action within the first 6 months. Again, we were really pleased with that as a result, and it kind of really spoke to that hypothesis. And also a really interesting learning for us was that 80% of donations were made as part of an engagement action, so part of a daisy chain. So asking someone to fill in a survey and then asking at the end of that, would they like to make a donation, or any other kind of non-financial action. That was far more successful, as Beth said, that was far more successful than these wonderfully well-crafted appeals that we fretted about and spent hours crafting to really hone the copy. That none of those performed anywhere near as well as just a very simple engagement action with a very simple donation proposition at the end of it. So yeah, that was a really important learning for us back then. And also just some of the key things we learned. So there was a really strong link between campaigning and fundraising. Like, we saw that people who took those campaigning actions were significantly more likely to donate, and vice versa. So it really kind of brought out this idea that actually fundraising and campaigning need to be working so much more closely together at Versus Arthritis. We also found that for us, that recognition, empowerment, and relevance were the key drivers for support, and that empathy wasn't for us. I know it's quite often, and this is different for every charity, but there's almost a bit of an assumption as fundraisers that those empathy propositions are always the kind of first thing we always reach for, of presenting a situation and asking people to donate to help solve that situation. We found for us that just didn't work at all, and that it was all part of that picture we were building up about our supporters, that actually they're relatively self-interested. The people who come to us, they're not coming to us because they feel really kind of strongly about how arthritis is affecting other people. They're coming to us because they themselves have arthritis. And throughout that whole initial pilot, we tested so many different things that every time there was a donation proposition, we made sure we were testing different themes, different calls to actions, and it really helped us learn that actually that empathy proposition isn't really important to us. We need to really show relevance and recognition for the people who were coming to us because they themselves had arthritis. We also learned that surveys are a really important and really effective way of engaging our audience. It's become a bit of a joke internally, but our audience just love talking about themselves. They love telling us their experience, how they feel about things. And there's kind of two great benefits to that. One, we know engagement actions are super important and keep people engaged, but also it allows us to learn about who our audience are, what they care about, and what we should be doing. And that really kind of helped us over the kind of years that followed. And also it kind of just really emphasize to us that this approach to integrated journeys was absolutely essential to us. As I said, we've done so much testing as a team on different donation propositions, and none of it had particularly worked until we arrived at this idea of kind of an integrated approach to journeys. And that was when we started to recruit new donors. So it was really important for us to kind of, it really showed us as a fundraising team that that was the direction of travel. That was where our future donors, our future fundraisers was through this integrated approach to journeys. But we also learned that there was lots more still to learn. So that was kind of where we were at the end of that initial pilot. And from there, that project evolved. So it was initially that project for a welcome journey, but then from there, we knew we had this really engaged group of contacts. So we wanted to continue the journey. We wanted to keep them engaged. So we developed this ongoing, we sort of pitched a, or briefed out rather to more onion to say, we want to keep these people engaged. We want to keep these people on a journey. We want to keep communicating them. So there was this project to keep them engaged. At the same time, we also had this new campaign live, Impossible to Ignore, and we knew we were expecting all of these new people into the charity as a result of that. So we had a separate project to welcome those people into the charity. And over the months that followed that led us to this kind of integrated approach for campaigns. So like most charities, or rather like many charities, we had an internal campaigns network, this list for people who we just communicated about campaigns. Every time there was a petition, every time we wanted them to email their MP, there was this internal campaigns network. And through the learnings of that pilot, we actually thought we need to get rid of this campaigns network and we need to integrate it and take this integrated approach. And all of these different projects kind of led us to this this vision of actually we just need an ongoing journey for everyone, and to treat everyone as if they just care about arthritis and stop treating them in these little silos that we quite often like to put people in. And along the way, the finding your allies and finding the different teams, like say campaigning was the first one, and building that relationship with the campaigns team really allowed us to kind of take this approach and to spread it out. And at every stage, it was about finding our allies and kind of building that little empire, as it were. We also developed a completely new way of working of this centralized approach. So we had this kind of model where there was a journey manager, quote unquote, and that was the role more onion were really taken. They were leading on the strategy and journey design and developing content for us. And that was part of this kind of capacity building model that they have, and that they proposed for taking this model, giving us the resource to kind of manage it and slowly kind of handing that over to us internally. We also worked with a great freelancer called Debbie Boone, who worked on a lot of the kind of data implementation and data management. And that was really the kind of role of a journeys officer. And it's important that these were like central roles and they're not service delivery. These aren't roles that take briefs from other teams who are, put out comms because the campaigns team want a particular comms to go out on a particular day. They were central roles and they were really leading the strategy and finding the content that was right for the audience at that time. And there was a kind of core team around them of fundraising, campaigns and marketing who had regular contact. And then there was kind of a tier above that, kind of the regional teams, media and PR, who kind of were less involved, but also kind of fed into this strategy. And yeah, I'll hand to Beth to talk a bit about some of the principles we had.
So we didn't want these emails to feel like it was an organisation pushing out information. We wanted it to feel like someone had sat and written this email and actually sent it to them. And we've seen that work because people will sit down and write back really, really lovely emails back. Some of them are really long. It's given us loads of interesting insight on our audience. Arthritis isn't a very well-known condition and it's often dismissed. So we want to make sure that people, when they arrive with us, they finally feel seen when they start receiving our emails. And that community proposition is really, really important there. Arthritis, although 1 in 6 people have got arthritis, it's not very well known. And it's not often taken seriously. And that's what a lot of our marketing campaigns were about. But it meant that actually a lot of the people coming to us were people with arthritis because nobody else really took it as a thing that you needed to get support with. We've always centered voices and experiences of people living with arthritis. We want to hand the mic over. We're not the experts. We are much stronger when we've got a community together and they're feeding into our strategy, into what we are our strength is in our community, and so we never ask people to join Versus Arthritis. We ask them to strengthen our already active community, and they feel that feeling of community, and we've seen that proposition land really well. Next slide, please, Jack. So for this, we've seen through the results that balance of campaigning, fundraising, service, signposting, that people don't see themselves in the silos that we have traditionally as a sector put them into. As I said, we co-create with supporters. One of the most impactful emails we've ever sent out was from one of our campaigners, Brenda, who talked about the pain that she was in while she was waiting for surgery. The surgery waiting lists are absolutely huge. They're only getting bigger. This was during COVID time as well. The number of people that sat and wrote and shared really, really honest reflections on how they were feeling, the effect it had on their mental health. That insight was stuff that we could push out to every other team in Versus Arthritis, and it was really powerful for us to understand how to meet their needs. We're very flexible and reactive in the way that we put together our emails. We make sure we prioritize what that audience needs in that moment. If something comes in that actually isn't what we had planned, but we feel the audience would want to know about it over the other thing, then that's a tough conversation, but it's one we're going to have with our colleagues to say, actually, this is what the audience needs today. This is an opportunity for them. And we always segment to personalize based on supported behavior. So for example, frustratingly for all of us, I think, the email that performs best across every single segment, every single year, is when we ask them what Christmas cards we should be selling at Christmas, even though it usually goes out in April. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves having that opinion, but it means that we can then send them an email back when we do put those cards for sale and say, look, you helped us choose these. We'd love it if you bought some now. And we can really reflect that kind of thing back to them. They've often chosen completely different designs to what we would expect, actually, which is incredibly helpful for us when we're putting in orders to buy Christmas cards. And I really like it when it proves me right and Jack wrong. And then the other thing is that we are consistently present in supporters' inboxes. A lot of people, our line manager consistently is shocked that you can send an email to someone every single week and that they're okay with that, let alone that it actually makes them more engaged. But we can show from having tried this, we can show from the unsubscribe rates that actually this is what people need. It means that as long as the content is good, people want to hear from you and it makes them more engaged. And if anything, if you only email them once a month, they're going to forget about you. Next slide, please. So this is, if you've worked with me, and I think a few attendees have, this is something you'll have heard me say an absolute million times, is that your audience is different to every single other charity's audience. We can take benchmarks from the sector, and that's great for when you're trying to create kind of a case for support internally, but your audience will always be different. And so ask them who they are. Ask them why they're with you. It's a really lovely engagement action, but most importantly, it means that you can use that insight for future comms. Some of what you see on this slide are things that we'd set out as hypotheses at the beginning when we were writing the strategy. Most of it is stuff that we've learned along the way. And as we continue to grow our audience, we'll continue to ask them what they want and keep learning as we go. This is one of those ones that when people are trying to explain it, they do this a lot. But this is the model that we developed. So it's a lot of short welcome journeys based on their action that then feeds into a main supporter journey as quickly as possible, and always with a survey, because we need to know who they are and why they're with us. The ongoing journey then is a continuous year-round emails. They don't have a start and an end point. People can join at almost every point. If we know that it's been quite a donation-led welcome journey, then we won't put them in just before we know that there's going to be a lottery ask, for example. But otherwise, it's designed in a way that means it doesn't matter if you've not received the last 5, the last 100 emails, you still feel like this is a sensible place to come in. People can also leave. So for example, we've currently got live Steppers community event. people will likely come out of our main journey who sign up to that, so that they can get this lovely supportive product journey specific to their training or their fundraising, and then they can come back in, and again, it won't feel to them like anything has changed.
So yeah, so how did this kind of pay off for us? What were the results of that? Well, first we found that non-financial engagements are by far the most effective way for us to drive financial actions. So we found that people were 3 times more likely to give as via a daisy chain than via a direct donation call to action. And we had an average conversion from our daisy chains of 6%, which we're really happy with. And we found that newly recruited supporters who took a non-financial action were 4.6 times more likely to then make a subsequent donation, and vice versa. We also found that there was a really clear correlation between campaigning and fundraising, and we're still not 100% sure why that is. We think one, it's possibly down to that kind of shared values of people feeling strongly about a particular issue and wanting to campaign or take some campaigning actions in support of that, and donating is quite closely aligned. But we also think it's potentially largely down to the fact that internally at Versus Arthritis and historically our campaigners had some of the best experience, and actually they were probably just our most engaged people generally, not for any specific campaigning reason. So as Jess said at the start, I don't think there's anything inherent about campaigning. If you're an organization that doesn't campaign, that's not a huge problem, but we personally found that kind of campaigning and fundraising were really closely aligned. And we also found that from those campaigns, they were more likely to donate, and they had a higher average gift when they did as well. We also found that supporters who are in this integrated journey program were just much more likely to donate and fundraise generally, and had a higher average gift when they did. So they were 51% more likely to make an optional donation when they purchased something from our online shop. When taking part in community fundraising, they had a 32% higher average gift and 31% more likely to bank money. So every metric we looked at showed that the people who had this integrated journey and these regular communications were just more engaged and much more likely to support. And yeah, we kind of learned that this integrated, an ongoing year-round approach to integrated journeys was by far the most effective way for us to build an engaged community of supporters who are likely to donate and support us. But we also learned that we needed dedicated resource. Having the support of More Onion was absolutely invaluable, but in order for this to kind of be a long-term option for the charity, we needed that internal resource. We needed a central team, a manager who could really develop and run with that strategy and create that content. And we also learned that our current portfolio of products just wasn't right for our audience, that everything we learned about that proposition, about needing relevance and not about that empathy, showed us our fundraising products just weren't optimized for our audience, and we'd need to develop products that were right for them. So I know we're slightly behind schedule, but I think we might have time to pause for a quick poll, Jess.
I think so. Hang on, let me just change my view so I can see what's going on. So yeah, if you're, I don't know, like my past self working in organisations, there's lots of valuable stuff here. But Jack and Beth have made the case really clearly about the benefits of integrating and to speak to your supporters about a whole range of what you do. But as we've seen from the polls at the beginning, there are some real challenges and reasons why organisations are not doing that. So we thought it'd be interesting to have a quick look at those barriers before we move on. And Beth and Jack are going to talk a bit about how they tackled those and what kind of changes they've made internally. So I'm just going to launch our last poll here, which is about the barriers to this kind of approach in your organisation. So what are the barriers to taking a more integrated supported communications approach in your organization? An obvious one is data. If you don't have your opt-ins in line, or you don't have the right data in the right places at the right time, this is going to be really difficult for you. Is it people? Is your organization not really bought into this? Is it staff turnover? Do you keep making progress on this and then somebody moves on and it's back to the drawing board? Is it a lack of strategy? You're fighting for prioritization? Is it a lack of structure to allow you to work together on this stuff? Is it because you just don't think it's right for your organization, or something else? And if it's something else, please do put it in the chat. I'd be really interested to know kind of what what else might be stopping people or might make you feel that this is not the right solution for your organisation. And obviously, as you can see, you can click as many as apply to you. While you're answering that, Jack and Bethan, I know, are having a quick look at the question and answers. I know Bethan's been busily responding to some of the questions there, but hopefully we'll have a couple to post to them in person in a minute. So I'll just give you another moment to respond. We're up to about 2/3 of people have answered. Yeah, a few people in the chat pointing out budget. We didn't put that one. That's a really obvious one we missed. Just resource, you know, it takes work, it takes resource. Okay, last few seconds. I'm going to end the poll. 1, 2, 3. And share the results. So a really big spread. Data, as we would have expected, is a big one, and strategy. And hopefully what Bethan and Jack are going to share next is hopefully going to give you some ideas about where to start with that. We'll be sharing all of these results with the recording of the session, as well as the points that are made in the chat. So you'll have a chance to kind of get an overview of the contributions that other people have made throughout. So I'm going to pass back to Jack and Bethan for the last few. Okay, so how did we change things?
The honest answer is really slowly. We had to be really tenacious. So what we did eventually was to make the case for investment. But by this point, so this would have been the investment really for my role and for in-housing all of this work, and for investing in more running in the first place. But really, it's just build your case with evidence. Do it really slowly. One of the people in the chat I know has asked about prioritizing. Start small and get as much evidence together as you can. So we prepared a paper for our senior leadership team to make the case for permanent resource to manage it for the charity. We brought all of our audience-led writing knowledge into this. We saw exactly who we were writing for. This makes it sound actually like we wrote one paper. We've probably written about 17 over the years, really tailored them to different audiences. We got away with a GIF once. I'm not sure we'll get away with that again. But by this point, we had more than 2 years of results to show how effective this approach to supported journeys was in meeting really key organisational objectives. So we tied it into what we were putting as an organisation into our strategy. The iterative approach to this project had already brought in really key stakeholders, so there was wide support for this proposal across our directorates. We've done a lot of work in, again, bringing those audiences on a journey with us. I was hosting a journey mapping workshop recently, and unprompted and without any bribery, one of my colleagues said, this has been really good for us actually, because instead of having to think about content when we didn't have an action ready for our audience, that's something that the journeys team are doing, and it means that we can spend more of our time on building those actions when we need them to happen. Having it all in writing is really important. We know that there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of staff churn across the entire sector really. So keep things written down, add to it as you go along. And that means that if people leave, that it's all still there. For us as well, Jack does all the numbers. He is very good at projections and data. That's why he's done all of the results slides today. And I tell a really good story. And if you bring those things together, it's a much easier way to influence people. So lean into different strengths across your team. And this is the exciting bit. This is the stuff that we've now been able to do, making all of those blood, sweat and tears worth it over the years. We spotted gaps in our income generation. So somebody asked in the Q&A about are people more likely to donate if they're service users? Actually, most of the people that we were bringing in already, those leads we were bringing in for big marketing campaigns, they already were people who needed our services. They were people with arthritis. And we were trying to make a case of why arthritis was bad and why people should give to change it. And we realized that that was completely backward. That wasn't who we were bringing in. So we've started shaping our products for them. So that's what our new regular giving product is. We took it out to people in the journey to ask them, what would they want in terms of a regular support, what would they pay for it, and then we were able to reflect that back to them. We had people actually chasing us, asking when will this be ready. In those 2 months, we've got just shy of 450 new regular givers, whereas in the entirety of last year we had just over 200. And it's not just fundraising and marketing teams either. So for us, our content team are reviewing a lot of our health information, and had been struggling to get this survey in front of people with arthritis to get them to feed in. We sent one email last week and got 1,200 responses, because this is an audience, it just shows that they're already engaged, they're already used to being galvanized to do things, and they were there, and it means that they've got loads of insight now to go on from that. And it's not perfect. Like, we are still learning loads. I've only been in post since May. It means that more people now know about this, and so they're bringing more questions to us and going, "Ooh, how do I get in on this?" And that's probably, it's a really good problem to have, actually, but it is something that we're now figuring out what to do with.
Yeah, and this is just kind of a summary, really, of everything we've just talked about. And we are a little bit over time, so I won't go through every point in detail, but that point about kind of writing the paper and bringing the story together in that incremental way, starting small and growing and developing, is absolutely the reason we've been successful in driving this cultural change. If we'd set out from day one back in 2019 to with an objective to completely transform the organizational approach to journey, that project just never would have gone anywhere. It would have got bogged down so quickly in the bureaucracy and the layers of kind of sign off and all the different stakeholders. The fact that we take it at this slow, incremental kind of project by project approach towards a wider strategic goal is absolutely, I think, the reason why we've been able to kind of be so successful in changing the way we do things internally. And yeah, there's that kind of having colleagues who share that vision is absolutely vital as well. It's been great that obviously Beth and I have been able to work together for years with that kind of a shared vision and approach for what we want to achieve. And there are other people along the way. We were fortunate to have a campaigns team who were completely bought into the idea, who were completely happy to get rid of their campaigns network and hand it over, as it were. I mean, lots of campaigns teams would be super nervous about doing that. For good reason sometimes, but they were completely bought into this idea of an integrated approach being so much more effective. So yeah, having those allies was really important, and that resilience and persistence. We absolutely had issues and setbacks on the way where things didn't look like they were going our way. Kind of resilience and having that kind of tenacity towards that vision is super important. Very quickly before I end, there's a question from Emily Butler that I was typing out, but it's a really good question, so I can kind of address it quickly here about that principle of flexibility and how that works on a practical level. I'd say that absolutely was a huge barrier and one of the most difficult things to get right. There are lots of teams who don't like flexibility. They like to know exactly what email's going out in 1 year's time, and they like to plan it months and months in advance. Like, I think the way we got around that was that small project by project approach and developing, showing results and showing that this was an effective way of working. But another practical tip that we developed was planning out in quarters and planning in the things that couldn't move. So we knew, 6 months in advance, this campaign is happening. We need to earmark time for that, but leaving capacity within that, leaving some spaces, and knowing even when you get very close to that space, we don't know what that email will be, but actually we will get some content, will be reactive. So leaving those gaps in the plan for that reactive content and being comfortable with the fact that sometimes you're going to write an email on Tuesday and send it on Wednesday because you just need to do that. It's just kind of something you have to get comfortable with. But yeah, that was definitely one of the hardest bits of the project.
And just to say, it wasn't like that at the start either. When we started this project, everything had to go through our copywriter and then be signed off by 3 separate heads of. Like, this all sounds really lovely, but it is the end of 3 years of arguments.
And that's us, I think.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Jack and Bethan. And we've still got a little bit of time for questions, but Jack and Bethan have done an amazing job of answering your questions as we've gone along. So quite a few of those have already been picked up and tackled. Don't worry if you don't have time to read through all of those before we close today. So we will share those with the recording next week. But just to take a couple of quick questions live before we close. Joe had a really interesting question, which I'm sure will resonate for a lot of people, which is, I don't have budget for external resource. I have a small team. What should I prioritize? Where should I start? Bethan, do you want to pick up that one?
Yeah, I can do. So, I mean, I've said it already, but learning, ask the people you've already got and test those things out with other people, and then maybe even just try things. And even if you can't afford external resource, I don't know anyone in the charity sector that wouldn't actually be okay with you dropping them a message and going, I don't know what I'm doing. I want to try stuff. Could you help me? I've done that with other colleagues from other kind of conferences we've gone to and had really helpful phone calls with people. So if you can't afford the external resource, maybe just ask people and see if they'll help you for free. That's absolutely not agency approved.
We are very much in favour of peer-to-peer learning at More Onion, so I think that's absolutely absolutely a great place to start. Interesting question from Axel. I think might be useful to just develop. Could you tell us a bit more about the income generating product itself that you developed as a result of the process you've talked about? So what does it look like?
Yeah, so I can talk about that. So as a kind of charity, we had previously produced magazines, quarterly magazines that aren't charity newsletters. They're not about us, they're not about the charity. It is lifestyle and helpful content designed for an audience of people with arthritis. These kind of products had always kind of bounced around in the history of the organization and floated around, but we knew they were popular. And we were looking for ideas for like, how can we design fundraising products that are relevant and meaningful for people with arthritis, and having a value exchange was really important. Again, that kind of empathy, kind of traditional charity philanthropic wasn't a major factor for us. People didn't want to just kind of donate because they felt passionate about the subject. They wanted something in return, and actually this regular magazine that, again, it's lifestyle content. It doesn't talk about Versus Arthritis. It doesn't really talk about what we're doing unless it's relevant. It's a lifestyle content, and it kind of meets a need for people with arthritis. We would, through all the testing, we'd find there is this gap. There's this gap in information. People are seeking out information and not being able to find it, and this magazine actually met that need, and we tied that to a regular gift. And there was lots of testing within that. We did lots of surveys, as Beth said in the presentation. We just asked people, is this something you would be interested in? Would you be willing to donate £3 a month to receive it? And we got, I think, nearly 3,000 survey responses in the end, and a huge number of people saying, yes, absolutely, love that. And as Beth saying, people were literally chasing us. Because at the end of that survey, we said, thank you so much, we'll be in touch. And people were emailing, chasing us, saying, can I donate my £3 a month to get this magazine yet? And all of the insight and the surveys, like everything went into developing this magazine and to improve it and making it so that it met that need that we'd identified from all of the insight and the journey.
That's right. Thanks, Jack. And then one final question about channels. So are you talking to supporters across other channels? Do you align supporter journeys across channels?
Do you want to take that one, or shall I?
You can take that one.
I'll take. So the focus up till now has absolutely been email. That was where we wanted to start, and we think email is always going to be the core of an ongoing engagement platform. So it was the most important one for us to focus on first and to get right. But absolutely going forward, the presentation on this in another 2 years' time will be about all of the other channels were brought into this, the post, the SMS, the new forms of digital engagement that haven't yet been invented that we're going to be on. So yes, that is the next steps.
And actually, I did say I wouldn't take it, but I will. Post is absolutely where my heart is. It's where I come from, is direct marketing. And it's been really interesting how many learnings we've been able to take from this digital journey into understanding behaviours of other donors. So we've got a huge mail file of people who came from our legacy charities pre-merger, and many of them haven't donated in actually a really long time, and they're about to lapse. And what we've been able to realise through all this learning we've done with these people on our digital journey is that really, really similar people. And the reason is that we've gone this more traditional route of direct marketing campaign to kind of feed into things rather than what can we give you that better supports you. So now what we're trying to do is actually get this membership proposition that we've developed because of our digital journey and putting it in front of our direct marketing people. And I have 0 results for that yet, but we will do in a couple of months if you want to come back to us.
Fantastic. Well, here's what's happening next. Sounds like a really good point to pause on. So we'll close there. I've just got a few links and suggestions of things you might want to look at if you want more of this. So huge thanks to Jack and Beth. If you have any further questions for them or for us at More Onion, you can contact us directly. My colleague Charlotte's going to drop the details into the chat now. And we'll include those in the follow-up email. So watch out for that email next week, which will include the recording, the slides, the Q&A, and other useful links. If you like the sound of the Supporter Journeys workshop that Jack mentioned in the presentation, we're actually running this as an open training in February next year. Charlotte will pop the link in the chat. We can also offer this as an in-house workshop for your team, as we did for Versus Arthritis. If you're looking for ways to bring your team together and find new frameworks for planning and coordination, my colleague Florian's going to be presenting at CharityCon's digital conference this November, sharing More Onion's planning framework for integrated communications. You'll be able to find out more on the CharityCon's website. I think the full agenda for that event is going to be launched in a few weeks' time. And finally, a huge thanks again to our speakers, Jack and Bethan from Versus Arthritis, who've been absolutely fantastic. I'm looking forward to watching this again, taking more notes. Thank you all for coming, for participating in the polls, and we look forward to continuing this engagement. Do take a look at the links in the chat and look out for that email next week with recording, which we'll be really pleased for you to share widely with your contacts, your colleagues, and let us know what you think. Thank you so much for coming.